The words hit Tio like a punch to the chest. He stood frozen behind the kitchen door, his hands still raised to knock, his heart stopping mid-beat. Through the thin wooden panel, his uncle's voice carried clearly into the hallway. "I never wanted him, he's nothing but a burden. I should have sent him to an orphanage the day they brought him to my door." Tio was 15 years old. He had lived with his uncle Harlan for 10 years. For 10 years he had cleaned, cooked, worked in the vegetable garden, and fixed everything that broke in that old house. For 10 years he had told himself that his uncle loved him. That the coldness was just his uncle's way, that the silence was just how some adults showed affection. But in that single moment, standing behind that kitchen door, every lie he had told himself shattered into a million pieces. His uncle was talking to the neighbor, Mrs. Pemberton, who had stopped by to return a borrowed pot. Tio had been coming to ask if he could have permission to attend a school event. It was the first time he had ever asked for anything. He backed away from the door slowly, afraid that even the sound of his breathing might give him away. His legs felt weak, like they might collapse beneath him at any moment. He made it to the stairs and climbed up to his small room in the attic, each step heavier than the last. The room was barely big enough for a bed and a small desk. The ceiling sloped so sharply that Tio could only stand fully upright in the center. There was no heating, so winters were brutal. There was only a small window that let in a rectangle of light during the day. This was where he had spent the last decade of his life. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the cracked wall in front of him, replaying his uncle's words over and over in his mind. Nothing but a burden. Tio thought back to all the times he had tried to make his uncle proud. The time he had stayed up until midnight scrubbing the kitchen floor until it shone. The time he had fixed the leaking roof by himself at age 12, nearly falling twice. The time he had worked extra hours at a neighbor's farm just to buy his uncle a birthday present, a simple leather wallet that his uncle had never used once. Each memory now felt different. Each act of love felt meaningless. He remembered the way his uncle never hugged him, never said goodnight, never once told him he was doing a good job. He remembered eating dinner in silence every single night. The sound of forks scraping against plates, the only conversation between them. He had explained it all away. He had told himself that his uncle just wasn't good with words. That actions spoke louder, that surely, somewhere deep down, his uncle cared. But now the truth was undeniable. His uncle had never loved him, not for a single day. Tio didn't cry that night. He felt too hollow for tears. Instead, he lay on his back, staring at the wooden beams above his head, and made a decision. He would leave. There was nothing holding him here anymore. No love, no bond, no family, just a roof over his head and a man who resented his existence. But before he left, he wanted one thing. He wanted to find something, anything from his parents. A photograph, a letter, some proof that someone at some point had wanted him. His mother had died giving birth to him. His father had passed away a year later from an illness. That was all he knew. His uncle never talked about them. There were no pictures on the walls, no stories shared over dinner. It was as if Tio's parents had never existed. The next morning, while his uncle went to town for supplies, Tio searched the house. He went through closets, drawers, and storage boxes. He looked behind furniture and under floorboards. And finally, in the dusty corner of the basement, he found an old wooden chest that had been pushed against the wall and covered with a tarp. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside, he found a bundle of letters held together by a faded ribbon. There were old photographs, there were documents, and there was the truth. The first letter he read was from something called the Morrison Foundation. It was dated 1 month after Tio had come to live with his uncle. Dear Mr. Harlan Vance, we are writing to confirm that the Morrison Foundation is prepared to provide full financial support for the care and education of Tio Vance, in accordance with the wishes of his late mother, Elise Vance. This includes a monthly stipend for his living expenses, complete coverage of school fees, and a trust fund that will become available to him when he turns 18. Please confirm your acceptance of these terms at your earliest convenience. Tio read the letter 3 times, not understanding. Then he found his uncle's reply, a carbon copy kept for records. To whom it may concern, I do not want your money. I did not ask for this child, and I do not need your charity. He is my responsibility now, and I will handle it as I see fit. Do not contact me again, Harlan Vance. Tio stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. His uncle had refused help, had refused money that could have made both their lives easier. Why, he kept reading. There were more letters from the foundation, each one more pleading than the last. They wanted to ensure Tio was getting a proper education. They wanted to know if he had enough food, enough clothes, a warm place to sleep. Each letter went unanswered, then Tio found something different. It was a letter in feminine handwriting, addressed to Harlan. The name at the bottom was someone Tio had never heard of before, Rosalind. Harlan, I can't do this anymore. I've watched you treat that boy like a ghost for 3 years now, and it's breaking my heart. I know you're hurting. I know you lost your sister, and I know seeing him reminds you of her. He has her eyes, her smile. I understand that it causes you pain. But he is just a child. He didn't choose to be born. He didn't choose for his mother to die. He just wants someone to love him. You need to try, Harlan, for Elise's sake. She would have wanted you to love him. I can't stay and watch you punish an innocent boy for a tragedy that wasn't his fault. If you can't find it in your heart to be a father to him, then I hope you'll at least find a way to set him free. Goodbye, Rosalind. Tio's hands were shaking so badly now that he could barely hold the paper. Rosalind, she must have been his uncle's wife or girlfriend who left years ago. Tio had always wondered why his uncle lived alone. Now he knew. And he understood something else, too. His uncle hadn't just failed to love him. His uncle had resented him, had blamed him in some twisted way for the loss of his sister. Tio looked just like his mother, and that resemblance had been a curse. He dug deeper into the chest, and then he found it, a letter from his mother. It was written in careful, beautiful handwriting, on paper that was yellowed with age. The date at the top was just 3 days before his birth. My dearest Tio, I don't know if you will ever read this, but I wanted to leave you something. Just in case, the doctors have told me that my health is fragile. They say there may be complications when you arrive. I am not afraid of what might happen to me. I am only afraid of not being there for you. If anything happens, I want you to know that you are already the greatest love of my life. I have dreamed of holding you, of watching you grow, of being there for your first steps and your first words. Even if I don't get that chance, please know that you were wanted, you were planned. You were loved before you even took your first breath. I am leaving you in the care of my brother, Harlan. He may seem cold at first. He has always had trouble showing his feelings, but I promise you, he has the biggest heart of anyone I know. He protected me when we were children. He will protect you too. Give him time. He will love you, and if somehow he fails you, remember this. My love will never fail you. I am with you always. Your mother, Elise. Tio read the letter through tears that he could no longer hold back. His mother had loved him. She had believed in her brother. She had trusted him with her only child, and her brother had betrayed that trust completely. But there was one more thing in the chest, an envelope with Tio's name on it, sealed but never delivered. Inside was a check for a significant amount of money, enough to pay for education, for a fresh start, for a future. And there was a note attached, for Tio when he is old enough to leave and build his own life. His mother wanted him to have choices. Morrison Foundation. The foundation had sent this years ago, and his uncle had kept it hidden. Tio sat there in the basement for a long time, surrounded by the evidence of a life that had been stolen from him. He thought about confronting his uncle. He thought about yelling, about demanding answers, about making him pay for every cold word and every lonely night. But in the end, he did none of those things. That evening, when his uncle returned from town, Tio was already gone. He left a simple note on the kitchen table. I know everything, I'm not angry. I just can't stay anymore. Maybe one day I'll understand why you couldn't love me. But I hope you find peace with whatever is haunting you. Goodbye. He took only his mother's letter, the check, and a small photograph he had found of his parents on their wedding day. He walked down the road, away from the only homes he had ever known, and he did not look back. 10 years passed. Tio built a life for himself. He used the money to finish school, then went to college. He studied hard, he worked multiple jobs. He never forgot where he came from, but he refused to let it define him. At 25, he had become a successful architect, designing buildings for communities in need. He had friends, he had purpose, he had healed, and then one autumn morning he received a phone call. His uncle had passed away. Tio almost didn't go to the funeral. What was the point? The man had never loved him. They hadn't spoken in a decade. There was nothing left to say, but something inside him needed closure. He drove 3 hours to the small town where he had grown up. The funeral was held at a tiny church, and when Tio arrived, he found only 4 people in attendance. Mrs. Pemberton was there, now old and frail. She recognized Tio immediately and began to cry. After the burial, she approached him. He told me to give this to you, she said, pressing a worn leather journal into his hands. He said you would come. He said you always kept your word, just like your mother. Tio took the journal home. He didn't open it for 3 days. He wasn't sure he wanted to know what was inside. But on the 4th night, he finally found the courage. The journal was filled with his uncle's handwriting, messy, sometimes illegible, but undeniably emotional. It spanned years, starting from the day Tio had arrived as a scared 5-year-old. Most entries were short, guilt-ridden, broken, but the final entry, dated just 1 week before his uncle's death, was different. I watched him become a man, from a distance always. He doesn't know that I kept every article about him. He doesn't know that I cried when I saw his picture in the newspaper last year, him standing in front of a building he designed for orphan children. Orphan children, like he once was. I couldn't love him the way he deserved. Every time I looked at him, I saw Elise. I saw her eyes, her smile, and the moment when the doctor told me she was gone. I couldn't separate the grief from the child. I tried, God, I tried. But I was too broken. I pushed him away because I thought it would hurt less. It didn't, it just made me a monster. If he ever reads this, I want him to know that I never stopped thinking about him. I never stopped being proud of him. I just didn't know how to tell him. I didn't have the words, I didn't have the strength. He became everything his mother dreamed he would be, and he did it without me. I hope one day he can forgive me, not for my sake, I don't deserve forgiveness, but for his. I don't want my failures to haunt him forever. I loved him. In my own broken, useless way, I loved him. I just never knew how to show it. Tio closed the journal. The tears came then, tears he hadn't allowed himself to cry for 10 years. He wept for the boy who had craved love and never received it. He wept for the mother who had died too soon, and he wept for the uncle who had been too shattered to be what he needed. He understood now. His uncle had loved him, not in the way he needed. Not in the way he deserved, but the love had been there, buried beneath layers of grief and guilt and self-hatred. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't make the lonely nights okay. It didn't excuse the coldness or the cruelty, but it was something. Tio looked out the window at the night sky, and for the first time in his life, he felt whole. The anger he had carried for so long began to loosen its grip on his heart. The bitterness began to fade. He had spent his life believing he was unloved. But he had been wrong. His mother's love had carried him from beyond the grave. His uncle's love, though twisted and silent, had existed in its own tortured way. And now, at last, Tio could stop searching for the love he thought he never had. It had been there all along, just hidden, just waiting to be found.